Thank you. Everybody can hear me okay? All right, good deal. Well, thank you guys for coming out. Like I said, my name is Brian Barclay. Work for Advanced Engineering. Lead developer on the OpWorks product, and just going to kind of walk you through how this came to be and what it is, what it does, and really how it helped our clients operate their plants more efficiently and streamline a lot of the processes within their plant. So we'll take a look and we'll get started here. And it started out, we were approached by the city of Grand Forks, North Dakota's water treatment facility. And they had years and years of paper logbooks. And they wanted a way to sort of electronically track that same information. They wanted to be able to say, you know, on February 3rd, we backwashed a filter at this time, and they wanted easy retrieval of that data so that the next time they were looking at which filters were due to be backwashed, that information was more readily available than having to go back through the February binder and flip page by page trying to figure out when the last time they backwashed that filter was. So it started out, we just really wanted the online operator's log. So this was an online way for the operators to leave those notes, those electronic or those logbook entries, to get those out of the paper format and into an electronic database so that they were more easily retrievable. So like I said, they desired that speed and efficiency. They wanted to save time going back through the old logbook and have access to that data much quicker. They wanted accurate and defendable data. So as we started looking at their operator log, we noticed a lot of inconsistencies in the way things were being tracked, the way things were being recorded from operator to operator. A lot of mistakes were being made just in handwriting and other issues that we could take steps to make that data being tracked in the electronic logbook much more accurate. So again, the old logbooks, some of you probably are familiar with the paper system. These were huge 3-ring binders that spanned many months. The numerous pages made the data retrieval almost impossible. There was no searching, when you're going through 70 some odd days of paper sheets. Also, all their data, so if we looked at a more broad level within the plant, when it came time to report regulatory reports for the state or other things, their data was scattered across a lot of different locations. So they had Excel spreadsheets for some of the data. They had paper sheets where they would do their lab titrations and stuff. Those were on a giant printout. They had some stuff stored electronically, but it was all over the place. And so along with the logbook, we wanted to make a way that we could centralize all of that data. The data could not be verified. So it was up to the author or the operator who hand wrote that log to ensure that it was accurate. Again, that goes back to the accuracy and the defendability of the data. And so we can take steps in our online solution to help litigate those risks for inaccuracies. So here's an actual look. Again, for some of you, this might look very familiar. For others, maybe not. But these are the old logbooks that the City of Grand Forks Water Treatment Facility used. You can see they just had a shelf full of these. And again, a lot of what was in there, there might have been 1 or 2 people in the plant that really knew all of it. And as some of those elder statesmen, as some of those older staff near retirement, there was this need for, again, a quickly searchable database to take all that historical data and make that easier for the next generation of new operators, the new superintendent, to have access to all of that years of backlog of data. Just kind of a zoom in on one of them there so you can see the actual handwritten log and how hard that was to actually go back and find anything and pull any meaningful data when it was written this way. So we set out to improve upon that. And we sat down, we worked closely with the City of Grand Forks, and we developed a product that would take that and put it in an online environment. So they could access it anywhere inside their plant. They could access it. The superintendent could pull up the logbook from home and see what was happening over a weekend. When operators would come back, say they were off for a few days, they could come back, they could search the logs, see what had happened. So that's where we came up with this product. And to do that, to sort of tie all of it together, all of the data that we wanted to store, we sat down and we started to think about how we were going to do that. And the need for some storage mechanism became obvious right away. And what we decided upon was we'd set up an asset structure. So this isn't all that dissimilar from an asset management program, but that's not what we're intending to do. What we're intending to be is operational for the plant. And so our asset structure looked at the things that were important to the day-to-day operation of the plant. So they were able to sort of sketch out, and we worked with them to sketch out their water treatment process. All of the steps in that process, and we got down to where we mapped out all of the processes and all the places where they had what we defined assets as. So these were set up during their initial OpWorks setup, and these we tailored to them. So this wasn't a solution that out of the box we said, okay, you're a groundwater or surface water treatment facility, here's the set of assets you need to use. This was, you define your assets. What they call their clear well is what they were able to label it. I mean, so they were able to use a lot of their own terminology and things, so it made sense to them. It was comfortable. One of the big things that we discussed early on was the operator adoption of this. And we really wanted to take a lot of steps to ensure that the operators, A, found this useful, but also weren't intimidated by it. And one of the ways we did that is by letting them use a lot of that same familiar language in here. And when they saw it, it made sense. So we divide this up into locations. We also have different asset types that we can designate. And ultimately, again, what this asset structure allows us to do is take your SCADA data. It allowed us to go into their SCADA system and pull back all the readings. It allowed us to look at all the logbook entries and aggregate those into one common structure. So you could pull up an asset and see all of the SCADA readings for it, all the current values, and you could also look through the logbook entries for that particular piece of equipment. So this is what their system looks like, the City of Grand Forks. Here's their water treatment locations. Again, we spent some time working through this with them. So they've got their different reservoirs, they've got their main plant up here, pre-treatment, their intake facility, all of those things. And we sketched all this out and we worked with them. When you click on one of those, so here we would have clicked on the main plant, now you see a list of the assets at that location within their treatment process. So these are all the softening basins, the filtration systems, the chemical feeds, all of that stuff that's in the main water treatment plant is all reflected here. And we can drill down into these and then see the readings and stuff. So that's kind of how the asset structure works. Is we set it up and we let you create each of the assets, each of the locations. All right. The next step we wanted to do, once we sort of had the asset structure in place, we wanted to look at the operations management. Again, we really want to fill that void of, they had a lot of different software packages that did individual pieces for the operators. but we wanted to consolidate and streamline as much of that day-to-day operation as we could, and add new functionality that they had antiquated technologies for. And so we really spent a lot of time looking at how we could make the plant operate more efficiently. And that's reflected in this series of operations management features that we'll walk through. The first being the logbook itself, okay? In OpWorks, we call these the shift notes. Just the notes left from shift to shift. But this replaces that old logbook. It's tied to one of those assets, and that makes the retrieval that much easier. So instead of flipping through chronologic pages of data looking for a specific filter or something, now we go the other way and we say, pull up all my shift notes, all my logbook entries for this asset, and let me see them in chronological order. All right? This will kind of show you. So this is it's kind of hard to see, but this is looking at a softening basin in the main plant, and we set a date range, and it brought me back all the shift notes that met that date range for that particular asset, for that softening basin. So we can get a list of the logbook entries, their text, who added them, which operator it was that added them, and actually see them right there. So again, that was that first step in the day-to-day operation from operator to operator, making that process more efficient. Okay. The calendar, so as we got going, we're working with Grand Forks, we're doing the logbook. They really they had all these other ideas, and the calendar kind of began as a way to replace how they tracked their FYIs, or just these were just pieces of information that maybe the superintendent or the plant supervisor wanted the operators to be aware of on any given day. And what they did is they left Post-it notes on the refrigerator in the break room. And it was up to the operator to see those. It was up to the tackiness of the sticky note to stay all day and not get swept under the refrigerator. And so they really wanted, there's got to be a better way, and can we use OpWorks for that? And absolutely. So we set out and we built a calendar that lets them add those FYI reminders. First thing that the operators see when they log in is this calendar with any events going on for the day, and any reminders, anything that they need to be made aware of, they see immediately when they log in. So again, just something to streamline and make more efficient the day-to-day operation. Get rid of the sticky notes and make it electronic. The third thing in the operations management portion is tasks. And this might be, the need here was they operated under a 24-hour cycle. So there was always people on. And the day shift might need to leave something for the night shift to do. And there wasn't a good process in place for that. And so we developed a task system within OpWorks. And what this allows the admin to do is designate which operator or group of operators need to achieve or complete some tasks. So we can designate tasks for individual operators. Like I mentioned, the admins are the ones that can create those. Operators can also create tasks for one another through the logbook, through the shift notes. So when they add a shift note, let's say they're doing their nightly rounds at midnight, and they notice that a valve is leaking. They can actually go back to OpWorks, create a shift note for that asset saying, hey, this asset, leaky valve, needs to be looked at by maintenance in the morning. Flag it as needs attention, and it'll pull up a list of all the operators in OpWorks, and they can click who needs to see that task. And then as soon as they hit submit, that shift note creates a task for those operators that they selected. So again, it's a way for an operator to hand something off to the maintenance group. It's a way for the maintenance guys to say, yep, we took care of that and follow up. And so it's a simple but streamlined task management system integrated into the rest of OpWorks. This is just a look at one of those tasks. The task was for me to add groupings for the reports. And this has actually been very handy, working with Grand Forks, because I'm a user in OpWorks, in their OpWorks. So again, if they had things that they wanted, they could leave me tasks, just like this. And more often than not, my task list was a lot longer than that. It was usually, half the page or 3/4 of the page. But you can see it's got the text of the original task, and then I can add my comments, what I did to complete it, and mark complete at the bottom. So that's kind of the operations management side of it. We kind of looked at the asset structure, and then how we integrated that asset structure into making the plant operate more efficiently. And now we're going to kind of get into the data entry side of it. But are there any questions on the operations management side of it before I go any further? Yeah.
How do you if you have 16, let's say 16 operators,
Mm-hmm.
when you messages along,
Mm-hmm.
do they each have their own dashboard?
Yep. They each, when they log in, it's going to be individualized to each operator. Each operator has their own separate account, and they all log in. And yep, so you can leave individualized tasks and messages by operator. Mm-hmm. Okay. So after we did the initial setup of the operations management side of it, now we had the logbook. That was objective number one: streamline and make more efficient the logbook process. Now we started looking at ways that we could make the superintendent's job easier, and that being in the form of reporting, the data entry, the data collection, those processes, ways that we could help them make that process more efficient. And so we set out to take a look at readings. Go ahead and click next there. So we had two separate kinds of readings. We had the ones that were manual, that an operator physically went out and took a reading, and they needed to record somewhere. Or maybe they were at the lab and they did their titration, or they analyzed the total chlorine, and they needed to record that somewhere. We allowed them to define readings for each asset. So again, at a softening basin, they can define different readings that an operator would enter for that basin. Or for a generator, they can define readings that an operator would enter for that generator. And then ultimately, these manual readings then, it's the responsibility of an operator to enter the values for that so that we can track and report that information. The second kind of reading is then the SCADA side of it. So we fully integrated with Grand Forks' existing SCADA system. We brought over all the tags and all of that data. So now we could tie all those SCADA tags directly to an asset in OpWorks as well. So now an asset in OpWorks could look at a manual reading, say from the lab guys. They could look at a SCADA value pulled directly from a PLC, and they could also then look at all the logbooks and stuff too. So that's why we spent a lot of time kind of figuring out that asset structure, because that's what ties us all together. That's what gives us that ability to look at electronic SCADA data right next to that operator entered data. And again, so that allows for that direct comparison between the manual entered value and the SCADA value. All right, we can trend, we can graph those two simultaneously. We can run calculations on both of them and do lots of stuff because we have access to both that data. So once we kind of defined the readings that we were going to capture, now we needed the data entry system for the operators to actually be able to enter that. And we wanted to make this simple, and we wanted to make it very customizable for Grand Forks. So we set up a system that allows them to build basically just forms. Like any form you've ever filled out, we just have our forms online. So it's just an electronic form. They click into the box, they type in their numbers, where it's a calculated field, and there's a calculation to be done. OpWorks will do the math for them. So the admin can set up all of those custom calculations and take the mathematical error out of the operator's hands. It really enables the tracking of any data that you want specific to the operation of the plant. Grand Forks tracks not only their titrations and their lab data, but when they receive chemical deliveries. There's a worksheet that every time they get a chemical delivery, they enter it in OpWorks. That way, at the end of the month, they can run a report that says how much alum did we receive in this month, and they can get that just very quickly. They use it to track PTO requests. So there's a simple form that has a drop down that says who the operator is, the date that they want, how many hours they want, and it gets submitted. And then there's just a report that the admins can look at who's requesting vacation time. So it can be used for anything set up to track anything related to the plant operation. And it leverages the readings that you defined in those assets. So when we went through those softening basins and those generators, and we said these are going to be manual readings, now the worksheets pull those in and let the operators enter those readings in one of these forms. The nice thing that allows us to do is when you're defining those readings, you can set acceptable range, min-max values. You can set rounding. You can set your units. So all of that is taken, again, we wanted to make the data highly accurate and highly defendable. So we took all of that guesswork out and we standardized it because the electronic system allows us to do that. It allows us to say, hey, this number was supposed to be between 5 and 10, and you gave me 20. Now, is that okay? Is that an error? Or what? Or this number's supposed to be rounded to 2 decimal points, and you gave me 6. So just a lot of that data consistency stuff we can take care of right here. Here's what one of those worksheets looks like. So again, just a simple web form. Each of these white boxes is a field that they can just tab through and enter their numbers. All the fields with the little calculator. Once we get through this, I'll actually go over to OpWorks and show you guys this a little bit. It'll be a little bit bigger. But those are actually the calculated fields. So again, those are automatically calculated by OpWorks for them. So that's a look at the data entry. And again, that's completely customizable by them. They set all of that up. We worked with them. We took a look at those daily titration paper sheets that they had, and we helped them recreate them in here. But once they did that, once we did a couple of those, Grand Forks really took and just ran and made dozens and dozens of worksheets for everything that they did. So kind of the last piece of this then was ultimately what we wanted to do with the data. Now that we had it, it was highly accurate and defendable and all stored in one spot, was now let's build a robust reporting package that allows us to get out all of that separate data and report it in a meaningful way. So we have multiple different report types. Again, just like in the data entry side of it, these are all configured by the admin. So Grand Forks superintendent and plant supervisor sat down, looked at the reports they needed, and they configured these. It can integrate and summarize data across multiple worksheets. We'll show you a report that pulls in data from like 3 different worksheets and pulls in SCADA data and runs calculations and produces a meaningful report based on data that's spread out across a whole bunch of different inputs. And again, those are the reports that the old way took the longest. You had some over here in Excel, you had some paper stuff, and maybe you had some stuff in your SCADA system. And to aggregate all those together and run meaningful reports it can be challenging. We can configure these reports to be run at set times or intervals and have the report actually just be emailed out to a list of people. All right, so once you get your report set up, if you want it weekly, you can set it up to run Friday afternoon and just have it sent to you. We can also produce state regulatory reports. This is something that we're working on right now. We're working with some of our clients in North Dakota, Grand Forks included, and hoping to work with some Minnesota clients to get our hands on as many of those state mandated regulatory reports as we can. And what we do is we digitize them and put them in OpWorks. And then we create a worksheet for that report that allows you to track the data that needs to be reported. So the one we did for North Dakota was a quarterly TOC report. And so in one click, they can set a date range that they need to run. It's quarterly, so from the 1st January through now March, and it'll go out to that worksheet in OpWorks, pull back all the data, put it in the right format, and save it down as a PDF for them. So again, now the regulatory reporting becomes selecting the report they need to run, setting the date range they need to run it for, and hitting submit. And it gives them a PDF generated in the format that the state needs it. So this is just one kind of report. This is just looking at the chemical loads we received. And it just breaks out on the left the date that we received the load, and then across the top was all the different chemicals. So you can just this is kind of just the spreadsheet version report that just shows us the raw data that we got. This is exportable to Excel. So I mean, you can basically just do a data dump and get it. But this is handy for just kind of scanning back through and knowing what you submitted and what you had come in. This is a look at that regulatory report. So again, this is the state mandated North Dakota stage 2 disinfectants report. And this is the form that they submit. We digitized it. We created all these fields in OpWorks. We leveraged a worksheet, a data entry worksheet. And so now when they get their analyzed samples back, they enter it into that worksheet. And now this just pulls in all of the values from there, does all the averaging and stuff for them. And again, they set their date range and hit submit here. And it produces this state report for them. This is a little bit more advanced report. And I think maybe we'll come back to this one in a little more detail when we pull it up live. But this is basically the one that is going to do all the advanced calculations. This one's pulling from about 3 different worksheets and also looking at some SCADA values. And it's calculating the cost per 1,000 gallons in chemicals. So per 1,000 gallons of treated water, how much are they spending on each chemical? That's what this report's giving them. And we'll actually just show you that live so you can see the numbers a little better. We can also look at your reports then monthly. So you can kind of compare and trend from month to month different values. So you can go through and set up a report to be run and then look at it aggregated over a monthly period or over a several month period. So that's another sort of reporting mechanism that we have in there. After we got all of those report types done, they really came back to us and said, hey, now we want some trending. Now we want some charts. It'd be really cool if we could do some trends right in here and not have to go to our SCADA package for that. And so we looked at implementing trending and charting. And so we were able to incorporate that. And now what this allows you to do is create a trend of any value. Your SCADA trend tool is great for trending SCADA values. But what we can do is we can trend any value from any worksheet reading or SCADA value in OpWorks. And we can trend both of them at the same time. So again, we can create the multi-series trends. These charts, these trends, with a click can export to a PDF or a JPEG file if you need to put it into a report. So you have a nice visual trend to look at. All right, I think we got an example of one of those next here. So this is just looking at worksheet values, titration values for one of the softening basins, and just charting that, trending that. So again, you can see the multiple values being trended there. And you can just set a date range, and once you set up the values that you want it to trend, change the date range, and you get to change the trendle update. So that's kind of, we started up here with the operator log. We set out to take their old paper log and make that electronic. We moved through defining their assets so that we had a place to store all of this information. And then we got down into creating all those individual operations management tools to help their plant operate more efficiently before we got into the real data entry and reporting side of it. So that's kind of how the process went. That's how OpWorks kind of was created when we worked with Grand Forks. Are there questions overall? I know I've probably got a little bit of time, so if you have some questions, otherwise, or in the meantime, we'll jump over and we'll actually show you kind of a live demo and click you through a few of the things we didn't get to show you as well on here. But are there questions?
How are the search features?
Right now, we can do some full text searching on the shift notes and stuff. And otherwise, it's more in the custom reporting. And I can show you some of that here in just a second, yeah. Any other questions before I just click through some stuff? So this is again, now Josh just got logged in here. And so again, every operator sees their own unique dashboard here, their own tasks, the calendar of reminders. If you scroll down, there's the shift notes and things, the most recent activity in the system. But if you scroll up, let's take a look at the shift notes. Let's start there. And let's say we wanted to, we were coming up and we were gonna start to backwash the filters again. And so we wanted to run, take a look at all the times that, let's start with filter 1A, or filter 1, and see when the last time filter 1 had been backwashed. And we can see here, oh, this one was backwashed just, well, literally today, I guess. So we probably don't need to backwash filter 1. Let's go look at filter 2 and see, bring back all the shift notes. Let's see the last time that one was backwashed. And now we can see this one hasn't been backwashed in quite a while. So maybe this is the one that we'll backwash today. So what we can actually do now is, Josh is logged in as the admin, he can add a shift note for today, and he can say filter 2 needs to be backwashed. And in the location drop down there, that's going to show every asset that we have defined in OpWorks. So you can scroll down and find filter 2. And now if he scrolls down a little bit, this is where that needs attention that I mentioned. If he clicks on needs attention, it brings me back a list of all the operators. So now I can say, he can click on himself so it shows up in his tasks. But he can say, okay, Josh, you need to go out, you need to backwash filter 2 today. So if he scrolls down to the bottom and hits save, it's going to create a shift note, but it's also going to create this task for him. That's that operator to operator task that I mentioned. So operator 1 was supposed to look at which filters needed to be backwashed. He identified that filter 2 needed to be backwashed today. So he created a shift note and designated that to Josh. So now Josh can click on that task. It was filter 2 needs backwashing. He can say backwashed at 2:34. We just did it. It was real quick. And actually mark that as complete, removing it from his tasks. And actually, if he scrolls down now, it creates a second shift note. So the first one was the problem or the needs attention, and the second one is the action taken. And they're linked together. So if he clicks on that first, the one that was the problem, here it links to the task and the completed notes. So a good use that Grand Forks is using this for is when they have those problems that don't surface very often, maybe it's once every 6-8 months, they have that issue with a generator. It doesn't start, or they've started doing this where they do it as a task, and then they can track both the problem and the related solution. So it becomes a way to search and easily find what they did to make it work. So that's kind of a sense of how the logbook works. If we go, let's jump over to the worksheets, and we'll just show you a couple of these. Again, I mentioned Grand Forks has created a bunch of these worksheets. They have worksheets broken down into different categories. The administration side of it, the operations, distribution, their lab stuff. And if we just let's click on the titration one. Show you what that looks like. So here again, here's just a little bit better look at one of those data entry worksheets. If he clicks into 1A there and just starts entering some numbers, go to the next one too, and then we'll let it calculate that third field for us. And so if we ask it to calculate, it ran the calculation. It also noted that this value exceeded the min-max range. So again, it's that prompting that says, okay, it lets me submit the worksheet, but when I submit this then, it creates a shift note to the admin saying, hey, somebody entered a value that fell outside of the acceptable range, and it links them to the worksheet so that they can go back and review that. So maybe it can be explained with a calibration issue or something like that, but it's that paper trail. It's that audit trail of here we entered it, we notified the admin, and the admin was able to go and look at it. They can update the value if they'd like, if it was completely erroneous, and they want to replace that with the reading maybe taken from SCADA or something, substitute that in, they can do that. So that's a good look at how it calculates those fields for us, and also how it identifies the ones that aren't the value that it was expecting. Go back to the worksheets for a second. Let's cruise through a couple more of them. The chemicals received, that's the one that we showed you earlier, but this is just every load, every time they receive a chemical, they come and fill this out, and it tracks and it logs it. Let's go back to worksheets, and let's look at one more. Let's look at like the nightly rounds, the midnight rounds under operations. The midnight readings, I guess. There you go. So again, this is their operators go out at midnight, do a manual verification of a bunch of readings around the plant, and this gives them that worksheet to fill that out. One of the things that we did with OpWorks for them was we completely optimized it for a mobile device. So if your plant has any kind of internet access, whether that be Wi-Fi or even decent cell phone reception, they actually start these worksheets and then they go around on an iPad and they enter the data on an iPad. And then they can submit it right there. So they can be standing in front of that meter, taking the reading and putting it directly into OpWorks, not jotting it on paper and bringing it back to the computer that they have and entering it. So let's go walk through the reports now. And I'll show you that custom report here. We'll pull up that chemicals, that month-end inventory. So go ahead and just set a date range here, Josh, of maybe September. We'll do like a 1 month. We'll look at the month of September. And you'll see, so this is what I was talking about. This pulls from a number of different worksheets. And so this first column here is looking at that nightly rounds, that midnight readings worksheet that we just looked at. Because what they're doing in that midnight readings is they're doing visual inventories of all the chemicals. So they'll go around, look at all the dry chemicals, all the liquid chemicals, and just do a visual inventory of what they have on hand. And so this value right here represents the first time that worksheet was submitted in this date range. So that midnight readings on September 1st, these were the chemical levels that they started the month with. The next column there is the chemicals received. That sums up that chemicals delivered worksheet. So every time they received a load of alum, they filled that out. And what this column does is for that date range for the month of September, it brings back the aggregate value of all of the alum delivered then. So we know what we started with, and we know how much we received, so we can calculate, the report can calculate a net total for the month. And then we can take a look at our last midnight readings, the last time in the date range, so September 30th, that we do that midnight reading, and we can look at our visual inventory, and now we can calculate out the amount we fed during the month. So we do that for all the liquid chemicals, and then we come down to the second table, and we do it all for the dry chemicals. And then we come down to the bottom, and we take all of those pounds fed. We have the price from the chemicals received worksheet. We pull in the prices, and we calculate out a total cost of each of those chemicals for that month. And then this column, the water intake, that's the total number in 1,000 gallons of treated water for the month. That's pulled off of SCADA. So now we take a look at, for this much water that we treated, these were our chemical costs, so we can divide out and calculate out a cost per 1,000 gallons for each chemical. And then we can add that up at the bottom, and we can see that Grand Forks spent 53 cents per 1,000 gallons on chemicals for the month of September of last year. So this report probably took us half an hour, 45 minutes to set up. And now if Josh wants to look at the month of October, all he does is go up and change the date range now. So again, it was a little bit of setup time with the plant, but now the reporting becomes instant. All right? So instead of going through that couple hours every month to pull all this together, we do it once up front and now just report each month. Questions on that report at all, or anything? Let's click back on the reports then and take a look at, we can take a look here at the charts one more time and pull up one of these, like the third chart there or whichever one. The third chart here, this is the one that we showed in the presentation. This one's looking at manual entered values from a worksheet. If he clicks and drags, he can highlight a section of the chart and actually zoom in on that. So he can drill down and see it, that section of it larger, and actually look at, okay, what happened here? We're working right now, what's great about OpWorks is we're continually working with Grand Forks to make it better. And so one of the things we're looking at right now is integrating the logbook into our charting. So right here, go back to one of those little dips there. So right here where we had this cataclysmic dip, where there was obviously no value for this softening basin, we can probably assume that basin wasn't running or that wasn't being used at that time. But there'd be a shift note saying that. So we could actually pull up that shift note for this date and time and put a little marker on the trend that linked to that shift note saying, here's the reason, it was down for cleaning or whatever. So that's kind of the next level with the trending that we're working on that we're pretty excited about. If you click up in the upper right-hand corner, Josh, you can show them how, again, we can export to a number of different file formats. PDFs, JPEGs, just like that. Yeah, is there a question in the back?
Yeah, if you've got an iPad and you're going to the site and you want to take a picture of something, say for the log, having trouble
Yeah.
with a week, and this upload a picture?
That's a great question. And actually that's something too that we're working on right now with them is in the logbook entries, the ability to attach a file. So that would, on the iPad, if you have a file attachment field, it lets you choose something from your camera, or actually take the picture and directly attach that. So yeah, that's something that we hope to have very quickly for them. A lot of times what they want to do is hey, we changed the oil, and here's the manual, or here's what we used, the cheat sheet, and develop some of those and attach it to that logbook so that when they go back and they do that maintenance again, they've got that record, but they've also got that document. So absolutely. Mm-hmm. Other questions? We're at about 5 minutes, yeah.
Electric usage, is there any idea how?
Absolutely, we're working with a couple of clients right now that their electric meters are on their SCADA system. And if it's in their SCADA system being logged electronically, OpWorks can get at it. So very true, that they're actually modeling a water cost analysis report off of Grand Forks's, but also incorporating a worksheet that tracks hours, different operator levels. Operator 1 worked 8 hours in a day. And just doing very generic things like that so that they can offset the time costs, but then pulling in the electric usage too, and adding that cost as well. So we do have one client in particular that's working with that. And that's the thing, we just look at your existing SCADA. So with Grand Forks, they didn't have that, so they're just using chemicals. But if your SCADA system had that, OpWorks could do that. Yep. Yeah.
You enter bill information off of kilowatt hours and track it somehow?
You could, sure. Yeah, absolutely. You could very simply just create a worksheet that every month, I think this is what you're saying, every month when the electric bill came, you entered your kilowatt usage for that month and the price, and then you could just have the worksheet, take that worksheet into consideration. Yep. Other questions? We have some flyers up here and some business cards if anybody's interested in coming up and grabbing one of those. We're going to hang out and answer any other questions. So I mean, we're not in a hurry to get out of here. We'll camp out outside. If there are any other questions that you don't want to add or comes to you in the next couple of minutes here. But otherwise, thanks for your time and enjoy the rest of the conference.